Captain Sarah Mitchell had always been invisible. Not literally, of course, but in the way that mattered most in the male-dominated world of military aviation. She walked through the halls of Langley Air Force Base with her head down, clipboard in hand, checking off maintenance schedules and fuel reports while the real pilots strutted past her in their flight suits, their confidence filling the corridors like expensive cologne. At 28, Sarah had spent 6 years as a logistics coordinator, ensuring that the sleek F-22 Raptors were combat-ready. She knew every bolt, every wire, every system in those magnificent machines better than most of the pilots who flew them. But knowing and flying were two different worlds, separated by a chasm of regulations, protocols, and the simple fact that she had never been given the chance to prove herself in the sky. The morning of March 15th started like any other. Sarah arrived at the base at 0530 hours, her worn-out Honda Civic looking pathetic next to the sports cars and trucks that belonged to the pilots. She grabbed her thermos of black coffee and headed to the maintenance hangar, where Chief Master Sergeant Rodriguez was already barking orders at the ground crew. "Mitchell!" Rodriguez called out as she approached. "We've got a situation with Raptor 007. The pilot reported some unusual vibrations during yesterday's training exercise. I need you to run a full diagnostic." Sarah nodded and made her way to the aircraft. The F-22 Raptor stood before her like a sleeping predator, its angular stealth design both beautiful and intimidating. She had run her hands along these same surfaces hundreds of times, but she never tired of the way the morning light caught the aircraft's edges, creating shadows that seemed to dance across its gray exterior. As she began her inspection, Sarah's mind wandered to her childhood dreams. She had grown up in a small town in Ohio, the daughter of a mechanic who taught her that understanding machines was about more than just following manuals. "Listen to what they're telling you," her father used to say as they worked on cars in their garage. "Every engine has its own voice." Those lessons had served her well in the Air Force, but they had also created a longing that she kept buried deep inside. While other little girls dreamed of becoming princesses or teachers, Sarah had dreamed of soaring through clouds, of feeling the power of jet engines pushing her toward the heavens. But dreams and reality rarely aligned, especially for someone like her. The diagnostic revealed a minor issue with the hydraulic system, nothing that couldn't be fixed within a few hours. As Sarah worked, she found herself humming softly, a habit she had developed to help her focus. The hangar was mostly empty, with just a few technicians working on other aircraft in the distance. It was in these quiet moments that Sarah felt most at peace, surrounded by the machines that represented everything she couldn't have. You know, most people don't realize how much skill it takes to do what you do. Sarah looked up to find Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Webb standing beside the aircraft. Webb was one of the few pilots who had ever spoken to her as more than just another support staff member. He was in his late 30s, with graying temples and laugh lines that suggested he had lived more than most men his age. More importantly, he had a reputation for treating everyone with respect, regardless of their rank or position. "Just doing my job, sir," Sarah replied, wiping grease from her hands with a rag. "Don't sell yourself short, Captain. I've been watching your work for months. These birds sing differently when you've worked on them. Smoother, more responsive." Webb paused, studying her face. "Have you ever thought about flight training?" The question hit Sarah like a physical blow. It was the one thing she had thought about every single day for the past 6 years, but hearing it spoken aloud by someone like Webb made it feel both more real and more impossible at the same time. "I'm needed here, sir," she said, deflecting the question as she always did when the subject of her dreams came up in conversation. Webb smiled knowingly. "That wasn't what I asked." Before Sarah could respond, the hangar's emergency alarm began blaring. Both of them turned toward the sound as Master Sergeant Rodriguez came running across the concrete floor, his face flushed with urgency. "Sir, we've got a code red situation developing," Rodriguez called out to Webb. "Intelligence reports suggest a potential terrorist threat targeting a commercial airliner over the Atlantic. We need to scramble immediately." Webb's expression shifted instantly from casual conversation to focused intensity. "How many birds can we get airborne?" "That's the problem, sir. We've got 4 Raptors down for maintenance, 2 more that won't be ready for another 6 hours, and Raptor 003 just developed engine problems during pre-flight. The only fully operational aircraft we have is this one. Rodriguez gestured toward the F-22 that Sarah had been working on, but Major Harrison is in the hospital with appendicitis, and Captain Foster is on emergency leave. We're looking at a 30-minute delay minimum to get another qualified pilot here. Webb ran his hand through his hair, the weight of the situation evident in his posture. 30 minutes might as well be 30 hours when lives were hanging in the balance. Sarah watched the exchange, feeling the familiar sensation of being a spectator in moments that mattered most. What about the other squadrons? Webb asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer wouldn't be good news. Norfolk's birds are grounded due to weather, and Tyndall's squadron is already deployed overseas. Sir, we might have to consider reaching out to the Navy, but that's going to take even longer. As the two men continued their urgent discussion, Sarah found herself staring at the F-22. She knew this aircraft better than any other person on the base. She had memorized every gauge, every switch, every system. In her off-duty hours, she had studied flight manuals that she wasn't supposed to have access to, watched training videos that she had borrowed from friends in other departments. She had even spent hours in the flight simulators during late-night maintenance shifts, teaching herself the theoretical aspects of flying that no manual could properly convey. Sir, Sarah said quietly, her voice barely audible over the continued blaring of the emergency alarm. Neither man heard her. They were too focused on their problem, too caught up in the urgency of the moment to notice that the answer to their dilemma might be standing right beside them. Sir, Sarah said again, louder this time. Webb turned toward her, his expression distracted. Captain, we're going to need this bird ready for flight in 5 minutes. Can you make that happen? She's ready now, sir, Sarah replied. But that's not what I wanted to tell you. Rodriguez looked at her impatiently. Captain, unless you've got a qualified pilot hiding in your toolbox, we don't have time for I can fly her. The words hung in the air like smoke from a fired weapon. Both men stared at Sarah as if she had just claimed she could breathe underwater or fly without an aircraft. The emergency alarm continued its relentless wailing, but, in that moment, the three of them existed in a bubble of stunned silence. Captain, Webb said carefully, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but flying an F-22 isn't something you can learn from a manual. I know, sir. Sarah's heart was pounding so hard she was sure they could hear it over the alarm. But I've been training. In my off time, I've logged over 200 hours in the simulator. I've studied every flight manual, every emergency procedure. I know this aircraft better than anyone else on this base. Rodriguez looked at Webb with an expression that clearly said he thought Sarah had lost her mind. Sir, with all due respect, there's a difference between simulator time and actually flying a $50 million fighter jet. I know the risks, Sarah said quickly, sensing that her window of opportunity was closing rapidly. But what's the alternative? How many people are going to die while we wait for another pilot? Webb studied her face intently, and Sarah could see him weighing impossible options. In the distance, she could hear other personnel running through the hangar, their voices urgent and stressed. Every second that passed was another second closer to disaster. Captain, even if I believed you could handle the aircraft, I don't have the authority to put an unqualified pilot in the cockpit of an F-22. The paperwork alone would, sir, Sarah interrupted, something she had never done in her entire military career. Right now, I'm the only chance those people have. You can worry about the paperwork later. The look in Webb's eyes changed. For just a moment, Sarah saw past the rank and protocol to the man underneath, the pilot who understood that sometimes the rules had to be broken in order to save lives. She had seen that same look in her father's eyes when he made the decision to drive through a blizzard to reach a stranded motorist, knowing that the safe thing to do would be to wait for better conditions. Rodriguez, Webb said finally, get Captain Mitchell suited up. Sir, I have to protest. Your protest is noted and overruled. Captain Mitchell, I hope you're as good as you think you are, because if you're not, we're all going to have a lot of explaining to do. Sarah felt her knees go weak with relief and terror. This was it. This was the moment she had dreamed about for her entire life, but it was coming in circumstances she could never have imagined. As she followed Rodriguez toward the equipment room, her mind raced through everything she would need to remember, every procedure she had memorized, every contingency she had studied. The flight suit felt strange against her skin, heavier and more real than the one she had worn during her unauthorized simulator sessions. As Rodriguez helped her with the helmet and oxygen connections, she could see doubt and concern in his weathered face. "Captain," he said quietly, "are you absolutely sure about this? Once you're up there, there's no changing your mind." Sarah looked through the hangar toward the F-22, its canopy now open and waiting for her. In a few minutes, she would either prove that she belonged in the sky, or she would become a cautionary tale told in military aviation circles for years to come. The thought should have terrified her, but, instead, she felt a strange sense of calm settling over her shoulders like a familiar coat. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," she told Rodriguez. As they walked back toward the aircraft, Sarah caught sight of her reflection in one of the hangar's windows. For the first time in her life, she didn't see just another face in the crowd. She saw a pilot. The cockpit of the F-22 Raptor was smaller than Sarah had expected, despite her countless hours studying its layout. As she settled into the ejection seat, her hands moved automatically to the controls she had memorized from technical manuals and simulation training. Every switch, every button, every display was exactly where she knew it would be, but touching them for the first time in a real aircraft sent electricity through her fingertips. Lieutenant Colonel Webb's voice crackled through her headset as she completed her pre-flight checklist. "Raptor 007, this is Control. We've established communication with the threatened aircraft. Flight 447, a commercial Boeing 777 with 312 souls on board, approximately 400 miles southeast of your position. Intelligence indicates possible hijacker activity, but communication is sporadic." Sarah's mouth felt dry as she responded, "Control, Raptor 007. Pre-flight complete, all systems nominal. Ready for taxi. Raptor 007, you're cleared for immediate takeoff. Wind is calm, visibility unlimited." Sarah. Webb's professional demeanor slipped for just a moment, using her first name instead of her call sign. "Bring everyone home safe." The twin Pratt & Whitney engines spooled up with a sound that Sarah felt in her bones. She had heard this roar thousands of times from the ground, but experiencing it from inside the cockpit was like being caught in the heart of a controlled explosion. The power was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. As she guided the aircraft toward the runway, Sarah tried to calm her racing heart by focusing on the procedures she had practiced endlessly in simulation. Taxi speed, brake pressure, engine parameters, everything was responding exactly as she had learned it would. But theory and reality were proving to be vastly different experiences. "Tower, Raptor 007 requesting immediate clearance for takeoff. Raptor 007, you are cleared for takeoff. Godspeed." Sarah aligned the aircraft with the center line of the runway and pushed the throttles forward. The acceleration was unlike anything she had ever experienced. In the simulator, she had intellectually understood that an F-22 could accelerate from 0 to over 200 miles per hour in seconds, but feeling that force pushing her back into her seat while the runway markers blurred past her canopy was overwhelming. At 150 knots, Sarah pulled back gently on the stick, and, for the first time in her life, she left the Earth in a machine designed for aerial combat. The sensation of liftoff was so profound that for a moment she forgot to breathe. The ground fell away beneath her as the F-22 climbed at an angle that would have been impossible in any civilian aircraft. Raptor 007, climb to flight level 350 and proceed southeast. We're uploading the coordinates of Flight 447's last known position to your navigation system. Roger, Control. Climbing to 35,000 feet, heading southeast. As Sarah climbed through 20,000 feet, she began to relax slightly. The aircraft was responding beautifully to her inputs, every system performing exactly as designed. Her years of study were paying off, but, more importantly, her father's lessons about listening to machines were proving invaluable. The F-22 was talking to her through the seat of her pants, through the subtle vibrations in the controls, through the harmony of its engines. At 35,000 feet, Sarah leveled off and engaged the aircraft's sophisticated radar systems. The Atlantic Ocean stretched endlessly in all directions, a blue-gray expanse that would have been beautiful under different circumstances. But, somewhere out there, 312 people were trapped in an aircraft with someone who meant them harm. Raptor 007 were receiving intermittent communications from Flight 447. The situation appears to be deteriorating. We need you to locate and assess as quickly as possible. Roger, Control. Radar is active, scanning southeast quadrant. Sarah had studied radar interpretation as part of her simulator training, but the real system was far more complex than anything she had practiced with. The display showed various contacts, commercial aircraft following their normal flight paths, a few military aircraft from other nations conducting routine operations, and several ships on the ocean surface below. 20 minutes into her flight, Sarah's radar picked up a contact that matched the profile of a Boeing 777. The aircraft was flying at 37,000 feet, roughly 150 miles from her current position. More concerning, its flight path was erratic, with several course changes that didn't match any known air traffic patterns. Control, Raptor 007. I have a possible contact bearing 135 degrees, range 150 miles. Target appears to match Flight 447's profile, but flight path is irregular. Roger, 007. Proceed to investigate. Use extreme caution, we don't know the hijacker's intentions or capabilities. As Sarah closed the distance to the airliner, she tried to imagine what was happening inside that aircraft. Were the passengers aware of their danger? Was the crew fighting for control? How many hijackers were there, and what did they hope to accomplish? At 50 miles, Sarah could see the Boeing 777 with her naked eye, a small white speck against the vast blue sky. As she closed to within 20 miles, she activated her aircraft's sophisticated optical systems, which provided a magnified view of the airliner on one of her cockpit displays. Control, visual contact with suspect aircraft. It's definitely a civilian airliner, appears to be a Boeing 777 in Continental Airlines livery. Aircraft is maintaining altitude but continues erratic course changes. Roger, 007. Can you determine if there's any external evidence of hijacker activity? Sarah studied the magnified image carefully. The airliner appeared normal from the outside, no visible damage or modifications. But something about its flight pattern suggested that whoever was controlling it was either inexperienced or operating under extreme stress. No external indications, Control. But the flight pattern suggests possible pilot incapacitation or inexperienced person at controls. Copy that. 007, we need you to attempt visual contact with the cockpit. Get close enough to see what's happening inside, but maintain safe distance. This was the moment Sarah had been dreading. Flying the F-22 was one thing, but maneuvering close enough to another aircraft to peer into its windows required a level of precision and confidence that she wasn't sure she possessed. In simulation, she had practiced formation flying, but never anything like this. Sarah reduced power and carefully approached the airliner from behind and slightly below. The Boeing 777 was massive compared to her fighter, its wingspan nearly twice the length of her entire aircraft. As she closed to within 500 feet, she could see passengers in the windows, some of them pointing at her aircraft with obvious excitement. Control, I can see passengers in the windows. They appear alert and responsive. Moving to attempt cockpit observation. Sarah carefully maneuvered her aircraft to a position where she could see into the airliner's cockpit. What she saw made her blood run cold. In the pilot's seat was a figure in civilian clothes, not the uniform of a commercial airline pilot. Worse, she could see what appeared to be another figure lying motionless on the cockpit floor. Control, I have visual on the cockpit. Individual in civilian clothes is at the controls. Appears to be another person down on the cockpit floor. Situation confirms hijacking. Roger, 007. Can you determine the condition of the crew? Before Sarah could respond, the Boeing 777 suddenly banked sharply to the left, nearly colliding with her aircraft. Sarah reacted instinctively, pulling back on the stick and adding power to avoid the larger plane's wingtip. Her heart hammered as she realized how close they had come to a mid-air collision that would have killed everyone aboard both aircraft. Control, suspect aircraft just made aggressive maneuver. Possible attempt to ram my aircraft. I'm increasing separation distance. Negative, 007. Maintain visual contact if possible. Intel suggests hijacker may be attempting to crash the airliner into a populated area. We need constant eyes on target. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders like a lead blanket. She was the only thing standing between 312 innocent people and whatever horrific plan the hijacker had in mind. But she was also just one person in one aircraft, and she had never faced anything remotely like this situation before. As she maintained position near the airliner, Sarah noticed that the hijacker seemed to be struggling with the aircraft's controls. The Boeing 777 was designed to be flown by trained professionals, and whoever was at the controls clearly lacked the experience to handle the sophisticated aircraft properly. The plane's course continued to wander, sometimes climbing, sometimes descending, as if the person flying it was learning as they went. Control, hijacker appears to have limited flying experience. Aircraft handling is erratic, altitude and heading inconsistent. This might be an opportunity. What are you thinking, 007? Sarah's mind raced through possibilities. In her years of studying aircraft systems, she had learned that modern airliners had numerous safety features designed to prevent inexperienced pilots from crashing. But she also knew that those same systems could be overridden by someone with enough determination and basic knowledge. Control, if the hijacker is inexperienced, he might not understand all the aircraft's systems. There might be a way to force him to land without endangering the passengers. Explain your thinking. The 777 has multiple autopilot modes. If I can get close enough, I might be able to observe which systems he's using. If he's relying on autopilot, disrupting certain navigation signals could force the aircraft to execute predetermined emergency procedures. There was a long pause from Control before Webb's voice returned. 007, that's highly theoretical. And, even if it worked, you'd be talking about electronic warfare against a civilian aircraft. The political ramifications alone. Sir, with respect, what are the political ramifications if this aircraft reaches its intended target? How many people are going to die if we don't try something? Sarah could hear urgent conversations in the background at Control as her superiors weighed impossible options. Meanwhile, the Boeing 777 continued its erratic flight path, each course change potentially bringing it closer to whatever target the hijacker had in mind. 007, we're consulting with technical experts to evaluate your proposal. In the meantime, maintain visual contact and report any significant changes in the aircraft's behavior. As Sarah continued her aerial surveillance, she found herself studying the passengers she could see through the airliner's windows. Most appeared calm, unaware of the true nature of their situation. A few seemed to be taking pictures of her F-22 with their phones, probably thinking they were witnessing some kind of routine military exercise. In one window, Sarah could see a young mother holding an infant, gently rocking the baby while looking out at the ocean below. In another, an elderly man was reading a book, completely absorbed in his story. These weren't statistics or numbers in a briefing room, these were real people with families, dreams, and futures that hung in the balance. The weight of their lives pressed down on Sarah's chest, making it difficult to breathe. 6 hours ago, she had been just another face in the crowd, invisible and unimportant. Now, she held the fate of 312 strangers in her hands, and every decision she made could mean the difference between life and death. Raptor 007, this is Control. Our technical team has reviewed your proposal. It's feasible, but extremely risky. Are you prepared to attempt electronic disruption of the hijacked aircraft? Sarah looked once more at the passengers in the windows, at the mother with her baby, at the old man with his book. She thought about her father's lessons about doing what was right even when it was dangerous. She thought about all the dreams she had never pursued, all the chances she had never taken. Control, Raptor 007. I'm ready to proceed. The electronic warfare systems aboard the F-22 Raptor were among the most sophisticated ever developed, designed primarily to disrupt enemy radar and communications during aerial combat. But, as Sarah prepared to use them against a civilian airliner, she felt the weight of crossing into uncharted territory. No training manual had covered this scenario. Raptor 007, Control. Our technical team is uploading specific frequency parameters to your EW systems. The goal is to disrupt the hijacker's navigation display while leaving essential flight systems intact. You'll have approximately 30 seconds to execute before the aircraft's backup systems compensate. Sarah's hands moved across the electronic warfare panel, activating systems she had only read about in classified manuals. The displays showed multiple frequency options, each capable of disrupting different aspects of the Boeing 777's electronics. Too little interference and the hijacker would simply ignore the disruption. Too much and she might cause the aircraft to become uncontrollable, dooming everyone aboard. Control systems are ready. Confirm that rescue aircraft are standing by at alternate airports? Affirmative, 007. We have emergency teams at 3 different airfields within the target aircraft's current range. Medical personnel, firefighting equipment, and hostage rescue teams are all in position. Sarah took a deep breath and positioned her aircraft approximately 2,000 feet behind and 500 feet above the Boeing 777. From this position, her electronic systems would have maximum effectiveness while minimizing the risk of collision if the airliner made any sudden movements. Control, beginning electronic disruption in 10 seconds. Roger, 007. All stations are monitoring. Sarah activated the electronic warfare system, sending focused electromagnetic pulses toward the airliner's navigation equipment. Through her optical systems, she could see the hijacker's reaction immediately. The Boeing 777 began to wander from its heading as the navigation displays in the cockpit flickered and failed. The hijacker's inexperience became immediately apparent. Instead of switching to backup navigation systems or attempting to fly manually, he seemed to panic. The airliner began a series of steep turns as he struggled with controls he didn't understand. Control disruption is effective. Target aircraft navigation systems appear compromised. Hijacker is losing control of aircraft heading. Roger, 007. Can you see what's happening in the cockpit? Sarah maneuvered closer, using her aircraft's superior agility to match the airliner's erratic movements. Through the cockpit windows, she could see the hijacker frantically pushing buttons and flipping switches, clearly overwhelmed by the complexity of the aircraft's systems. But then, something went wrong. Instead of triggering the automated emergency landing protocols that the technical team had predicted, the disruption seemed to activate a different system entirely. The Boeing 777's autopilot engaged a steep descent mode, and the aircraft began dropping altitude at an alarming rate. Control, we have a problem. Target aircraft is in uncontrolled descent. Rate of descent appears to be over 3,000 feet per minute. At this rate, they'll impact the ocean in less than 10 minutes. 007, disengage electronic warfare immediately. Repeat, disengage all EW systems. Sarah shut down the electronic interference, but the damage was already done. The Boeing 777 continued its steep descent, and she could see through the windows that passengers were beginning to panic. Oxygen masks had deployed throughout the cabin, and flight attendants were moving quickly through the aisles, trying to calm terrified passengers. Control, EW systems are offline, but target aircraft descent continues. I think the hijacker may have damaged something when he tried to compensate for the navigation disruption. Sarah's mind raced through everything she knew about Boeing 777 systems. The aircraft had multiple backup systems designed to prevent catastrophic failures, but they could be overridden or damaged by someone who didn't understand their operation. The hijacker, in his panic, might have inadvertently triggered a cascade of system failures. 007, our technical team is analyzing the situation. Can you get close enough to make visual contact with the hijacker? We need to know his current state of mind. Sarah carefully approached the descending airliner, matching its rate of descent while positioning herself where she could see into the cockpit. What she saw chilled her to the bone. The hijacker was slumped over the controls, either unconscious or dead. And the aircraft's descent was accelerating. Control, hijacker appears unconscious or incapacitated. No one is actively flying the aircraft. Descent rate is increasing. Roger, 007. We're calculating impact time and location. At current rate of descent, the aircraft will hit the ocean in approximately 8 minutes. There's a small island about 60 miles southeast with a 6,000-foot runway. If we could somehow redirect the aircraft. Control, wait. I see movement in the cockpit. Someone else is trying to get to the controls. Through her optical system, Sarah could see a flight attendant climbing into the cockpit, struggling to move the unconscious hijacker away from the pilot's seat. The woman was clearly terrified but determined, trying to reach the controls that might save 312 lives. Control, a member of the crew is attempting to reach the flight controls. Female, appears to be a flight attendant. She's trying to move the hijacker. 007, we need to establish communication with whoever is attempting to fly that aircraft. Can you get on their emergency frequency? Sarah switched to the international emergency frequency and began transmitting. Boeing 777 in distress, this is U.S. Air Force Raptor 007. Please respond if you can hear this transmission. For several terrifying seconds, there was only static. Then, a shaky female voice came through her headset. Air Force aircraft, this is Flight 447. I'm Jennifer Walsh, Senior Flight Attendant. Our pilots are both unconscious. I don't know how to fly this thing. Sarah felt her heart sink. She had hoped that the person trying to fly the aircraft might have some aviation experience, but a flight attendant, even a senior one, would have minimal training in aircraft operation. Jennifer, my name is Captain Sarah Mitchell. I'm going to help you. First, can you tell me what you see on the main instrument panel in front of the pilot's seat? There are so many lights and alarms. The altitude display shows we're descending very fast. There's a red warning that says terrain and it keeps beeping. Okay, Jennifer, I need you to stay calm. We're going to work through this together. First, look for a large wheel or control yoke in front of the pilot's seat. Do you see it? Yes, I see it. It's moving by itself. That's the autopilot trying to control the aircraft, but something is wrong with the programming. Jennifer, I need you to grab that control yoke with both hands and pull it toward you gently. Not hard, just firm pressure. Sarah watched through her optical system as the flight attendant struggled to follow her instructions. The woman was clearly terrified, her movements awkward and hesitant. But, slowly, the Boeing 777's nose began to come up, and the rate of descent decreased slightly. That's good, Jennifer. Keep pulling gently. You're doing great. How does the yoke feel? It's heavy, like it's fighting me. And there's a mechanical voice saying pull up over and over. That's the ground proximity warning system. It's telling us we're too close to the ocean. Keep pulling on the yoke. We need to get the aircraft climbing again. Sarah monitored the airliner's flight path, providing constant encouragement and instruction to the terrified flight attendant. Gradually, the Boeing 777's descent slowed, stopped, and then reversed into a shallow climb. Jennifer, you did it. The aircraft is climbing again. Now I need you to look at the autopilot panel. There should be a series of buttons and displays near the center of the instrument panel. I see it, but I don't understand any of this. There are numbers changing constantly, and buttons labeled with things like HDG and Alt and SPD. Sarah realized that trying to teach someone to fly a Boeing 777 over the radio while both aircraft were airborne was nearly impossible. The flight attendant had managed to arrest the descent, but actually landing the aircraft safely would require a level of precision that seemed beyond anyone without extensive training. Control, this is 007. The crew member has stopped the descent, but she has no flight training. We need alternatives for getting this aircraft on the ground safely. Roger, 007. We're exploring all options. There's a possibility of remote piloting using the aircraft's automated systems, but it would require physical access to override certain safety protocols. What kind of physical access? Someone would need to access the aircraft's electronic bay and manually reconfigure the flight management system. It's theoretically possible, but it would require detailed knowledge of Boeing 777 systems. Sarah's mind began racing. She knew Boeing 777 systems better than most pilots, having spent years maintaining and troubleshooting every component of modern airliners before specializing in military aircraft. But the electronic bay was located in the belly of the aircraft, accessible only through a small hatch in the passenger cabin floor. Control, I might be able to do the reconfiguration, but I'd need to get aboard the aircraft. 007, that's impossible. We're talking about an aircraft-to-aircraft transfer at 30,000 feet. Even if such a thing were physically possible, the risks. Sir, what's the alternative? That flight attendant is doing her best, but she can't land a 777. If we don't do something soon, 312 people are going to die when they run out of fuel or make a mistake that crashes the aircraft. There was a long silence from control as Sarah continued to fly formation with the Boeing 777. Through the windows, she could see passengers looking at her aircraft, many of them now aware that something was seriously wrong. The flight attendant in the cockpit was struggling to maintain level flight, constantly fighting the aircraft's automated systems. 007 were consulting with technical experts about the feasibility of an aircraft-to-aircraft transfer. In the meantime, continued to assist the crew member with basic flight control. Sarah keyed her radio to the emergency frequency. Jennifer, you're doing an amazing job. I know this is terrifying, but you're saving everyone's lives. Can you tell me about the fuel situation? Look for a display that shows fuel remaining. I see something that says fuel QTY and there are 4 numbers. They all show different amounts, but they seem to be getting smaller. That's normal. Those are the fuel levels in each tank. What's the smallest number you can see? The smallest one shows 8.7, and next to it, it says LBSX 1000. Sarah did quick calculations in her head. The aircraft had approximately 8,700 pounds of fuel remaining in its lowest tank, which meant they had perhaps 2 hours of flying time left. Not much time to figure out a solution that would save everyone aboard. Control, fuel situation gives us approximately 2 hours before forced landing becomes necessary. We need to make a decision soon about transfer operations. 007, stand by. We have an update on the transfer possibility. The voice of Admiral Patricia Harrison, commander of the Atlantic Fleet, came through Sarah's headset with the weight of absolute authority. Captain Mitchell, this is Admiral Harrison. I'm told you're proposing an aircraft-to-aircraft transfer at 30,000 feet to save the passengers aboard Flight 447. Yes, ma'am. It's the only viable option I can see given our time constraints and the crew members' limited flying experience. Captain, what you're proposing has never been attempted before. The physics alone make it nearly impossible. An F-22 has a stall speed of approximately 120 knots, while a Boeing 777 cruises at 500 knots. Even if we could somehow match speeds, the turbulence from the airliner would make any transfer attempt extremely dangerous. Sarah had already considered these problems, but she had also been thinking about alternative approaches that might work. Ma'am, what if we don't try to match cruise speeds? The 777 can fly much slower than its normal cruise speed. If we could get it configured for approach speeds, around 150 knots, the transfer might be feasible. You're talking about a commercial airliner flying at near stall speeds with an inexperienced pilot. The margin for error would be virtually zero. Respectfully, ma'am, the margin for error is already zero. We have 312 people aboard an aircraft that's going to run out of fuel in less than 2 hours, being flown by someone with no training. If we don't try something, everyone aboard that aircraft is going to die anyway. There was a long pause before Admiral Harrison responded. Captain, I'm going to ask you a question, and I need you to answer honestly. Do you really believe you can pull this off, or are you letting emotion cloud your judgment? Sarah looked through her canopy at the Boeing 777 flying alongside her. Jennifer Walsh was still struggling with the controls, her inexperience obvious in every movement. Through the passenger windows, Sarah could see people who had no idea how precarious their situation truly was. Ma'am, 6 hours ago I had never flown an F-22 in actual combat conditions. Everything I've done today has been based on theory and simulation. But I know aircraft systems better than almost anyone, and I know that what I'm proposing is technically possible. Is it dangerous? Absolutely. But, doing nothing is guaranteed to kill everyone aboard that aircraft. Understood. Captain Mitchell, you have authorization to attempt aircraft transfer operations. God help us all. Sarah felt her stomach clench with fear and anticipation. She was about to attempt something that had never been done before, with the lives of 312 people hanging in the balance. But, first, she needed to explain the plan to Jennifer Walsh. Jennifer, this is Sarah again. We're going to try something that might sound crazy, but I think it's our best chance to get everyone home safely. What do you mean? Jennifer's voice was strained with exhaustion and fear. I'm going to transfer from my aircraft to yours. Once I'm aboard, I can reconfigure the flight systems to enable remote piloting from the ground. But I need you to slow the aircraft down and configure it for landing approach. I don't know how to do that. I'll talk you through it step by step. First, look at the autopilot panel again. Do you see a button labeled SPD with numbers next to it? Sarah watched through her optical system as Jennifer studied the instrument panel. The woman was clearly overwhelmed, but she was fighting through her fear with determination that Sarah found inspiring. I see it. It shows 480 right now. Perfect. I need you to turn the knob next to that display counterclockwise. Turn it slowly until the number shows 200. As Jennifer followed the instructions, Sarah could see the Boeing 777 begin to decelerate. The aircraft's engines reduced power, and its nose pitched up slightly to maintain altitude at the slower speed. Good. Now look for a button labeled App or APPR. That will configure the aircraft for approach mode. I found it. Should I push it? Yes, press it now. The Boeing 777's configuration began changing as its automated systems prepared for a landing approach that wasn't going to happen. The aircraft's flaps extended partially, and its speed continued to decrease toward the target of 200 knots. Jennifer, you're doing perfectly. The aircraft is now flying slow enough that I might be able to transfer over. But I need you to do something else for me. What? I need you to go back into the passenger cabin and find the electrical access panel. It's usually located near the center of the aircraft, marked with warning labels about electrical equipment. Sarah could hear Jennifer moving around the cockpit, then, her voice came back through the radio. Sarah, I found it. There's a panel in the floor with lots of warning stickers. Excellent. Open that panel, but be very careful. Inside you'll see circuit breakers and electrical connections. Don't touch anything yet. I'll give you specific instructions once I'm aboard. The most dangerous part of Sarah's plan was about to begin. She needed to position her F-22 close enough to the Boeing 777 to somehow transfer between aircraft. In her mind, she had developed a theoretical approach based on everything she knew about both aircraft types. Control, this is 007. Beginning final approach for transfer operations. Target aircraft is configured for approach speeds and maintaining steady flight. Roger, 007. Emergency rescue aircraft are standing by. Medical teams are on standby. Captain Mitchell, good luck. Sarah maneuvered her F-22 to a position directly beneath the Boeing 777, matching its speed and heading. The larger aircraft's turbulence buffeted her fighter, making precise positioning extremely difficult. Through her canopy, she could see the airliner's landing gear bays and electrical access panels. The plan she had developed was based on using her aircraft's ejection seat in a way it was never designed for. Instead of ejecting away from danger, she would eject upward toward the Boeing 777, using her parachute to control her approach to the larger aircraft's cargo bay. Jennifer, I need you to tell the passengers to brace for impact and move away from the center section of the aircraft. I'm about to do something that's going to create some turbulence. Sarah positioned her F-22 approximately 200 feet directly below the Boeing 777, matching its course and speed as precisely as possible. Her hands moved to the ejection seat controls, systems designed to save a pilot's life in an emergency, but which she was about to use for something completely different. Control, 007. Beginning ejection sequence. If this doesn't work, It's going to work, Captain.
Bring everyone home.
Sarah pulled the ejection handle, and the world exploded around her. The canopy blew away, and the rocket motors beneath her seat fired, launching her upward at incredible speed. But, instead of ejecting away from her aircraft, she was rocketing toward the Boeing 777 above her. The wind blast was tremendous, threatening to rip her helmet off despite its secure straps. Through her visor, she could see the Boeing 777's belly approaching rapidly. Her parachute deployed automatically, but she used the steering lines to guide herself toward the aircraft's main cargo bay. The impact with the Boeing 777's hull was harder than she had expected, but her training kicked in. She grabbed onto the cargo bay latches and pulled herself close to the aircraft's fuselage. Behind her, she could see her F-22 beginning an uncontrolled descent toward the ocean below, its job complete. Working quickly, Sarah located the external access panel for the cargo bay and used her emergency tools to open it. The Boeing 777's cargo hold was pressurized, so entering it was like stepping into a normal room rather than the hostile environment of 30,000 feet altitude. From the cargo bay, Sarah made her way to the passenger cabin access ladder. She could hear voices above her, passengers and crew members talking in urgent, worried tones. When she emerged into the passenger cabin, wearing her flight suit and carrying her helmet, the reaction was immediate.
Everyone remain calm, Sarah announced. I'm Captain Sarah Mitchell, U.S. Air Force.
I'm here to help get this aircraft safely on the ground. She made her way quickly to the cockpit, where Jennifer Walsh was still struggling with the controls.
The flight attendant looked up at Sarah with an expression of relief and disbelief. I can't believe you actually did that, Jennifer said. We're not done yet.
I need to access the flight management computer and reconfigure it for ground-controlled landing. Sarah opened the electrical panel that Jennifer had located earlier and began working with the Boeing 777's complex systems. Her years of studying aircraft electronics paid off as she quickly identified the connections she needed to modify. Control, this is Captain Mitchell aboard Flight 447. I've successfully transferred to the aircraft and am beginning reconfiguration of flight management systems.
Outstanding work, Captain.
Our ground control team is standing by to take over once you've completed the modifications. Working with practiced efficiency, Sarah bypassed several safety systems and created a direct link between the aircraft's autopilot and the ground-based control systems. It was delicate work, requiring precise knowledge of Boeing 777 systems, but her experience served her well. Control modifications complete.
Flight 447 is now configured for ground-controlled approach and landing. You have control of the aircraft. Roger, Flight 447. We have control. Vectoring you toward Norfolk International Airport for emergency landing.
Runway 05 is cleared and emergency equipment is standing by. As the ground-based controllers took over flying the aircraft, Sarah finally allowed herself to feel the exhaustion that had been building throughout the crisis. She slumped into the jump seat behind the pilot's positions, watching as the unconscious hijacker was secured by passengers who had been organized by the flight attendants. Jennifer Walsh sat down beside her, both women watching as the Boeing 777 began a controlled descent toward Norfolk International Airport under ground control guidance.
How did you know all of that would work? Jennifer asked. Sarah thought about the question for a moment. Honestly, I didn't.
But sometimes you have to take a chance on the impossible when the alternative is certain failure.
As Flight 447 approached Norfolk International Airport, Sarah looked out the window at the emergency vehicles lined up along the runway.
Fire trucks, ambulances, and FBI response teams were all standing by, ready to deal with whatever might happen during the landing. The landing was smooth, executed flawlessly by the ground-based pilots who could see exactly what the aircraft was doing through its telemetry systems. As the Boeing 777 rolled to a stop on the runway, surrounded by emergency vehicles, Sarah heard something she hadn't expected: applause from the passengers. Through the cockpit door, she could see passengers hugging each other, crying with relief, celebrating their survival. Flight attendants were moving through the cabin, checking on everyone and preparing for the inevitable investigation that would follow. Flight 447, this is Norfolk Tower.
Welcome home. Emergency crews are approaching your aircraft now.
As FBI agents and medical personnel boarded the aircraft, Sarah found herself thinking about the morning she had spent in the maintenance hangar, invisible and unnoticed. In the space of a single day, she had gone from being just another face in the crowd to saving 312 lives in a way that no one would have thought possible.
Lieutenant Colonel Webb was among the first people to board the aircraft, and, when he saw Sarah, his expression combined relief, pride, and amazement.
"Captain Mitchell," he said, "I think we need to have a serious conversation about your career path." Sarah smiled, looking around at the passengers who were alive because she had been willing to risk everything on an impossible plan.
"Yes, sir. I think we do."
As she prepared to leave the aircraft that had become the stage for her transformation from invisible logistics coordinator to hero, Sarah realized that sometimes the most important moments in life come when you stop being just another face in the crowd and step forward to do what needs to be done, regardless of the cost.